Hello and welcome to another episode of Hot or Cold Take, where I present to you a take I have in D&D and you tell me whether it's a hot or cold take, hence the name of the series. I haven't actually seen that many of the comments tell me whether my takes are hot or cold in the series so far, so do it for this one right now. Comment. Well, not right now, later after you've heard my take, but then comment. So today's take is concerning average lifespans of playable creatures in D&D, and the fact they don't make any sense. They're pretty dumb. So before I get into why I think this, if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button as I'll be uploading new D&D content every week, plus an episode of my D&D podcast with my buddy Liam called War Podcaster. Also like the video because it makes me feel good. Thanks. Right, so, no more stalling. There are tons of playable races in 5th edition, and including stuff like Grungs, Vidalkans, and Locarlusa. These things, there are 41 playable races as of the time of recording. 41! That's a whole bunch of them, and they're all varied with different racial traits and ability scores and all sorts of stuff, and one of the things that really separates them, aside from, their looks, are their average lifespans. And I've put them all in this handy dandy table for you. Look at that! Wow, such technology. Look at the research I did. So first things first, Minotaurs didn't have an average lifespan. I guess they just exist. A Simic hybrid depends on what it's a hybrid with, and a Warforged just doesn't age. It's immortal from natural causes. Good to know. So you can see on the table a lot of races from Tieflings to Kalashstars, Yuan-Ti Purebloods, Exandrian Orcs. They all bundle up around the 80 to 100 area, which makes a lot of sense. It's a lifespan players can relate to because it's the most similar to humans in real life. But then, you've got the outliers. I guess, f*** you if you want to play an Aarakocra, your lifespan is 30 years. And that is the end of the campaign, everyone. The Tarrasque has been slain, balance has been restored to the world, and you are all heroes. All of you return to your homes and live happily ever after. Apart from you, Craw. You die a year later, and everyone is too busy living happily ever after to attend your funeral. But the rest of you live full, happy lives. And then we get the other end of the spectrum. Furbolgs, Loxodons, Gnomes, Dwarves, and Vidalcan live at minimum a cool 3 times longer than the average playable race. And then we get to Elves. 750 years? That is an absurd amount of time, something that we can't even comprehend. And for those of you that are thinking, yeah, I mean, that's a long time, but it's fine, they're just old, wise creatures, I'll just play them as old, wise creatures. Do you want to know what someone who is living in our world would have experienced if they were around 700 years old? The Great Famine, the Black Death, the Wars of the Roses, the creation of firearms, the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, the first circumnavigation of the globe, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, the American Civil War, the abolition of slavery, the First World War, the Great Depression, the Second World War, JFK's assassination, 9/11, the journey into space, and TikTok dances. And in theory, they'd still have about another 50 or so years left. I mean, can you imagine what the world would be like in 2070 and how different it's going to be to today? One person experiencing all of that, and I've missed out a lot of stuff off that list. When people like to play elves as these old, wise sages of information, that is an unplayable amount of wisdom. We can't comprehend living through all of that. It is beyond the scope of our imagination. And not only that, these lifespans really mess up timelines. My War Podcaster co-host Liam had to change the history of his world in its timeline because the Furbolg in our party mentioned to him, oh, I would have been alive for this world-changing event, which he shouldn't have been. And in my campaign, one of my characters is an elf. He's a really young elf, and he has a mentor character of a dwarf who took him in from a young age and worked with him for years. And his mentor is younger than him. The gnome in the same party has a human boss who's significantly younger than him. It can really mess up dynamics to have this elder or this fountain of wisdom that your character can turn you, who's lived for like 60 years less than you. My very young elf would be older than any sort of town elder who's a human, and they're supposed to be the wise one. And what are the benefits to having this age disparity? That's not a rhetorical question. Seriously, what are the benefits? It gives the races variety? I mean, you can have variety without one of the races having an average lifespan of 25 times that of another. And that's not hyperbole. Do the math. Aarakocra has 30, Elf has 750. Now look, if you want to run an arc or have some sort of central tension in your world around lifespans and how certain races feel hard done by because they're at a natural disadvantage to other races simply due to how long they live, that's fine. That's a really interesting tension to explore. Maybe an orc is upset by elves living longer than them by default, so they turn to necromancy in order to extend their life, but fall down the path to lichdom. That's really fun. But why would you need things to live like 7 times longer than others for that to apply? So here's my house ruling that I'd use. Any race that has an average lifespan of over 150 gets reduced to 150. Any race that has an average lifespan of under 70 gets raised to 70. That still means that at the two extremes, one race is living over double the time of another, which still allows for that tension between races if that's what you want, but it just makes everything easier to plan out for DMs in terms of world history, doesn't mess up dynamics between mentors and mentees, and allows players to have a realistic grip on what an older character would have experienced in their life. Am I just salty about this because of my campaign? I mean, probably. But I still think I have a point. Don't at me. Well, actually do at me. I want to hear your opinions. At Pete Quinnell on Twitter. So what do you think? Is that a hot or cold take? Let me know your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear them. I genuinely think I've got a really good point here. I do not see the point of having this massive age disparity between people, but hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe some people just aren't bothered by it, but for me, it just gets in the way and doesn't offer any positives. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, enable notifications to make sure you know first when new videos go live. And yeah, stay tuned for more Warcaster content and check out War Podcaster as well, where me and my co-host Liam talk about D&D for ages. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was Warcaster.